Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Harrogate series. Harrogate is a large borough, one of the 11 districts of North Yorkshire. It's got 139 civil parishes. Which one are we in this episode? Welcome back to Harrogate again, people, and today it's a little bit overcast, but this is supposed to go away within the next couple of hours, so it should be nice and sunny again as we go through the next run in this series. Now, behind me here you can see a big house. That is Park House Mill, and that is going to start us off in this one. It's a big village, this one, and there's quite a lot to talk about, lots of interesting little features. I've even driven through a ford on the way to my parking space this morning. We'll catch that as we walk around the parish of Bishop Monkton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Bishop Monkton, Monk's farm of the Archbishop. This week in Harrogate, we're back in the area between the main town and the city of Ripon. Some 5 miles away from the cathedral of the latter is Bishop Monkton, a picturesque village full of all the charm and character we've come to expect from such a place. Bishop Monkton dates back over 600 years to when it was just a small cluster of about half a dozen houses and the only activity was farming. Today, farming still continues, but the village has now expanded to well over 300 houses, with its 700 or so residents engaged in scores of different occupations, many commuting to Harrogate, Leeds, Bradford, or even further afield. 20th-century developments include a council estate built in the 1960s and 2 more housing estates built at the southeastern tip of the village. Features include a prominent beck, which runs through the place with a flotilla of ducks adding to its charm. It also has a popular pub, a second pub which is no longer open, a school, a church, a chapel, and a historic mill. Further afield is Bishop Monkton Ings and a small nature reserve in an old railway cutting. The jewel in the crown, however, is the village hall and playing field complex, which wouldn't exist today had it not been for the resilience of all the locals. So, let's go and find the fruits of their labour. We begin proceedings with Bishop Monkton Moor. This is not much more than a small cluster of buildings close to the A61, but it's also where Harrogate Garden Centre can be found. This can be a very busy place, so catching it first thing in the morning when it's closed was always going to be the easiest option. Formerly known as Cascades and Grassroots Garden Centre, this joined the British Garden Centre Group in 2021. It offers a wide array of plants, fertilisers and foods, tools and home essentials, like any good garden centre should. Keep your eyes on the edges of this road. By using this lane, we'll cross the old railway line which we last met at South Stainley. Bishop Monkton's nearest station was at Wormald Green. Part of the old line has now been turned into a little nature reserve. Dubbed the Bishop Monkton Railway Cutting Reserve, it's managed by the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. And speaking of nature reserves, there's also Bishop Monkton Ings. This is a site of special scientific interest situated to the east of the village. It consists mostly of marshy grassland with some broadleaf woodland and some fen alongside 2 watercourses which run through the site. This varied wetland forms a habitat for a variety of plants, including the semi-parasitic marsh lousewort. In 1807 the Ings was a meadow and was put up for auction by the landowner William Wells. At that time the adjacent common land was undergoing enclosure and also for sale. In 1862, when tenanted by George Heath, who was farming 132 acres with his brothers Edward and Robert, it was described as a close of grassland and was 3 acres in size. Modern access to it is limited. You can walk to it though via the muddy Ings Lane public footpath which runs east from the village. It forms part of the Ripon Rowell Walk. There's no vehicular access and there are no facilities. Although it's an SSSI, the site is now under threat from land improvement and drainage requirements of adjacent agricultural land and settlements. In 2016, the site was assessed for any potential damaging effect of mining for minerals for a period up to 2030. In 2018, a permit was granted for a poultry farm next to the Ings, although its construction required that the farm and the Ings be separated from one another by trees and a fence. Our main walk begins at the northeastern corner of the village at Park House or Freedom's Mill. Made of brick, the building consists of a house on the left and a former watermill on the right. A flax mill operated on the site for many years, but in the 18th century it was rebuilt as a paper mill. Other than a short period of ownership by Newby Hall, it remained in the Renton family until it closed in 1975. The street it stands on the corner of is called Renton Close. It's now a block of 6 apartments, having been converted in 1990. Let's head into the village now and see what else we've got here. One thing you certainly cannot miss is the beautiful Bishop Monkton Beck. This shallow stream traverses the entire eastern portion of the village as it makes its way towards the River Ure. According to the village's very own website, it's populated by a family of ducks. They sure have a nice home. Bear that fact in mind though if you find yourself driving through the village. If you do, you may have to pass through this shallow ford, as I did on my way to the start point. Once past that, you're on Main Street, where very quickly you can start to appreciate Bishop Monkton's beauty. On a small green next to the beck here is a stone under which there's a time capsule placed 2 years ago. It's due to be opened in 100 years' time. Apparently, it has a couple of COVID-19 related items in it, amongst other things. It was buried by children from the local primary school on St John's Road. That's the street which you come to if you continue walking down Main Street to its end. Where the 2 roads meet is a very wide opening through which the beck flows. There are ancient houses and gorgeous trees, and the whole place has a welcoming aura. It's the quintessential Yorkshire village. This here is the old schoolhouse, also on St John's Road. It was built and opened in 1849 and closed in the year 2000. It's now a private house, and so too is the old blacksmith's forge, which is literally next door. The forge was one of the busiest businesses in Bishop Monkton, and the sound of its anvil would echo throughout the village. In the early 1900s, George Park was the blacksmith and shoed horses from miles around. There was also a second forge on Main Street, but nobody's really sure of where that one was. The only historic evidence of it comes in the form of an advert, which was dated 1936. So to the current school, Bishop Monkton C of E. This opened in 1971 after the old school saw rapid expansion due to a growing population. Peak numbers came in the mid to late 1980s when it was catering for 130 children. In more recent years, preschool groups have also been based here. Outside the school is the parish notice board, so let's get this one ticked off. Bishop Monkton is in the books. Our next job is to follow Bishop Monkton Beck again upstream and towards the church. In doing so, I couldn't help but notice the benches that line its banks, and that got me thinking. There's plenty of benches that are on the bank of this stream, and I imagine in the summertime they're populated with people who have a drink or two in their hand, and they can buy those from the local pub. If I turn the camera around here, you might be able to see the end of said pub just there. Let's go and check that out next. It's called the Mason's Arms. It's not clear exactly when the Mason's Arms was built, but it was in business by the 1840s. At that time it was owned by Hammond's Brewery of Bradford. Hammond's would later combine with other brewers to form Northern Breweries, and the Mason's Arms became a free house in the early 1990s. Now at this point, all you can hear is the sound of rushing water. As we continue to follow Bishop Monkton Beck, several pretty waterfalls start to become features along its length. Here's just a couple of them, and I reckon these are just gorgeous. I'd hope you agree. At the end of the road is the church, hiding away behind some trees. It's dedicated to St John the Baptist, although that wasn't the case back in 1354. In that year, a chapel of ease was built by the villagers on or near the site of the current church. It was known simply as St Helen's Chapel and remained in use for the next 500 years. In 1822 it was replaced by a new chapel, which in turn was superseded by this, built to the designs of Hodgson Fowler. The current church, made of limestone, consists of a chancel, a nave, an organ chamber, 2 vestries and a 50-foot tall western tower. The churchyard contains the village's war memorial, a simple cross with the names of all 8 men lost across the 2 global conflicts in the early 20th century. The Lit Gate is worth a look too. This was erected in 1962 in memory of the family of John Butterfield, residents of the village since 1846. After exiting the church, the next corner has a pair of big white houses, which were worth a look, but neither are listed. Interestingly though, my map showed this area to be where Diamond Lane Doodles are based. They aren't artists, they breed dogs, Australian Labradoodles to be precise. After turning the corner, we come face to face with the current vicarage on the Knaresborough Road. I say current because there's an old vicarage along here too. On the right hand side before we reach that is Melrose Road. This is part of a housing estate whose presence greatly expanded the population in the mid-20th century. After that, the gates of the old vicarage come into view. This was built in 1867 at a cost of £2,500. It was then sold on completion of the new vicarage built in 1966, and now it's a private house. And housing is all that remains between here and a crossroads. Okay, now we find ourselves at a crossroads at the northwestern area of the village. You can see here, Moor Road, that goes down to Bishop Monkton Moor, and if you follow that all the way to the end, you'll come to Harrogate Garden Centre, just opposite the end of that road on the A61. And for us, we are going this way, continuing north up this road here. You can see some new builds over there in the distance. That is where the village hall is located. We're going to go up there and check that out, and then come back via a path which you can just see on the right hand side there to this point, and then we'll go down Hungate towards the end. Let's talk buses next. Bishop Monkton is served by the number 182, which runs between Ripon and Knaresborough. In the early 2000s, this part of Bishop Monkton got a bit of a makeover. That bus stop can be found in an area of new builds. That's not all that's up here though. In the car park of the village hall is the Jubilee Wood, planted in 2002 to mark the Queen's Golden Jubilee. In January this year, a 12-foot tall English oak was also planted to mark the Platinum Jubilee. On the other side of the car park is a pristine-looking bowling green. The village's bowls club was established in 2003. The village hall has its own tale to tell, one that highlights just how great the community spirit is here. When Bishop Monkton needed a new village hall and failed to get a lottery grant, the residents decided to go it alone and set about raising the eye-watering sum of £400,000 all by themselves. And they did it. Raising the huge total took over 10 years. As well as the hall, these brand new playing fields were also created. Everyone in the village got involved, and much of the work was carried out by volunteers. Far too many to mention them all here by name. The playing field is now one of the most well loved in the area. It has a croquet club which was founded by Richard Field in 2008. The local cricket club also play here, and it has pretty much everything else you'd expect from a recreation ground, like a children's play area for example. Our final stretch sees us walk down Hungate, back up to the old paper mill where we began. Although Bishop Monkton has 13 listed buildings, only 2 of them can be found on Hungate. I thought that was pretty surprising, because there are loads that look worthy of a listed status. This house here is a good example of what I mean. That's Lindley House, and perhaps in another village, its architecture would earn it a Grade 2 listing. You'll notice though how close-knit this street feels. All very tight and narrow, it reminded me of a typical Nottinghamshire village at this point. Next up is the Lamb and Flag, a former pub which was once owned by Hepworth's Brewery in Ripon. Later it was acquired by Vaux Breweries of Sunderland and became a free house during the 1980s. In the not too distant future, a small collection of new houses will be built behind this pub. The walk ends with two historic buildings. First up is the Methodist Chapel, which was built for the Wesleyans in 1874. It replaced the first nonconformist building in the village, a stone chapel dating from 1840, which was located behind Zion Terrace. This chapel seats 120 and it's equipped with a pipe organ. And finally, on Zion Terrace is the Old Mechanics Institute, built in 1859, mainly thanks to contributions from the locals. It was the brainchild of John Butterfield, the man who the lit gate at the church remembers. The institute was the hub of village life for well over 100 years. And from this point it's a simple walk straight back up to the mill where we began. It's a lovely place, is Bishop Monkton, and this early in the morning it's just got an aura of loveliness. It's the only word I can think of. And if you want to stay here in Bishop Monkton, may I recommend this place. That is Hall Farm, which is a self-catering cottage or a bed and breakfast. And it's right opposite the Mechanics Institute, which we've just seen. There you go. That is Bishop Monkton. Great place. Time to move on to the next one. And that will do us for Bishop Monkton, or at least that's what I thought. You see, this was supposed to be a normal drive out, but I quickly realised there was another landmark on this road. It's an old corn mill, and much like Freedom's Mill, it too is now residential. When it was still a mill, it was run by Ken Morland, and the interior was full of rickety floors with gaping holes, through which bags of grain were hoisted up using chains and pulleys, powered by a rusty water wheel. Health and safety would have a fit these days. It's also haunted too, apparently, by a former mill worker, and dogs refuse to enter it. And on that note, it's off to the next one. I'll see you later, folks. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.